Hey girls, gays and trans, welcome to Witchcraft is equally as important as religion. And for today's video, I am going to be talking about the different witchcraft traditions. To preface, I do want to say that you don't have to fall under any of these labels, and even if you follow a specific tradition, whether it's the ones that I mention or other ones, you don't have to say the label and you don't actually have to follow it to a T. You can interpret it to how you want it to be. However, if you want a full label and you want to know everything about that tradition, this is the video for you to watch. And so I am going to be discussing each tradition and the subtypes in each tradition. I am going to be looking at some material to ensure that I end up saying everything that I have to say about each tradition. So if I end up looking down a lot, it's because of that. I am only going to be doing the two most popular types of witchcraft and the ones under those, because those are the ones most widely practiced, as well as the ones that have the most amount of information to actually practice according to that tradition. So the first one is Wicca. You might have heard of it. It's a very common and popular one, and under this there are many subcategories, but Wicca in itself is basically honoring the goddess as well as the god and doing your practices and rituals and spells according to that goddess and god. The goddess is referred to as the triple goddess because there are different names: the mother, the maiden, and the crone, to represent the phases of life, and is often represented by Freya, and is always associated with the moon, the stars, the earth, and the cycles of nature. The god is represented by Odin, who is the horned god and is associated with the sun, the wilderness, the forests, and the animal kingdom. The first type of Wicca tradition is Gardnerian. Basically, the entire thing is about the polarity of both the genders as well as nature. The main thing of this tradition is that it is highly secretive and very formal. A lot of the traditions and rituals as well as spells that they do involve a lot of procedures and formalities in order for it to be valid and according to that tradition, and it's very secretive and hierarchical, but that was common during those times, so it's like pretty common in a lot of them. And they also follow a specific unedited book of shadows, and I will discuss what the Book of Shadows is in another video. But the main rule that they follow is the Wiccan Rede, which is "an it harm done, do what ye will," which basically means that there is personal freedom combined with total responsibility for the consequences of one's actions, and so murder and things like that are off the table. And then also the rule of three, which is basically the belief that whatever energy, magic, or intention a person puts out into the world will return to them threefold, whether it is positive or negative. So it still holds the person accountable as well as responsible for their actions. And so if you were to practice Wicca in general, but each of these rules are musts, and you do have responsibility for whatever spells you cast. It is nothing I can do about it. The next one is Alexandrian Wicca, which is basically involving a lot of high ceremonial magic and Kabbalah. Kabbalah is basically using divine names, angels, and incantations to influence the physical world, and it is based on a Jewish mysticism, and so it involves a lot of chants and amulets, and it is represented by the Tree of Life, basically through which the universe manifests, and it is followed in both Jewish tradition and Western esoteric systems. They tend to wear a lot of ceremonial robes as well as have a lot of formal ritual tools, and they blend the Wiccan solar holidays with planetary hours and angelic invocations. The next one, and this is my favorite because I actually follow this one, but it's Dianic Wicca or witchcraft. And so it's basically a feministic and monotheistic offshoot of the original Wicca, and it focuses on the goddess and views the horned god as a secondary option or optional, and so you don't have to do your practices in honor of the god. You can just do it in the goddess, which obviously I love. And they specifically ensure that practices are done in women-only spaces, and they focus on healing, fertility, healing trauma, specifically sexual trauma, and patriarchal trauma. A lot of the rituals are focused on the three phases: mother, maiden, and crone, and those phases of life are very much embraced and not disregarded as it is in patriarchal society. And so they rely heavily on emotional release, using the moon as magic as well as collective chanting. So the main thing is to ensure that you are all women in the space and you are specifically focused on females and feministic issues. The next one is CX Wicca, which is basically similar through Wicca, but it looks at it through a Saxon cultural aesthetic. So basically Saxon is a type of culture back then, obviously, and it was one of the first major Wiccan traditions to explicitly recognize self-initiation. And so they dismantled the entire belief that you need somebody else to initiate you as a witch, and so they said that you can initiate yourself. And so that's the main thing of being a full practitioner, and it like ensures that each person can practice solitary witchcraft, which is great for people who are by themselves and want to practice only by themselves. And there are no oaths of secrecy, and the rituals and practices are talked about a lot of the time, and there are a lot of books that show the practices and rituals that they used to perform during those days. They also focused a lot on honoring Saxon deities like Woden and Freya. Woden is basically Odin, and the rituals are performed in tunics or robes, and they emphasized a lot of open-air gatherings and using runic magic. Now we are on to traditional witchcraft, which is the second type of witchcraft, and under these there are a lot of subcategories. So the first one is Cochrane's craft, Cochraneism, and so basically they focus on mysticism, poetry, and a dual deity system. So the pale goddess as well as the horned god of the underworld. They reject the Wiccan rede, which is to harm nobody and you will have responsibility, as well as the threefold law. And they focus heavily on personal responsibility, intellect, as well as code of honor. They work a lot of the time outdoors, and they prefer being in nature rather than having a formal altar table, which I will also discuss what an altar is in a future video. But the rituals emphasize poetic incantations and seasonal fire festivals. So this works out great if you love creating poetry and writing, because then you can really spend a lot of time making your incantations as poetic as possible. And obviously if you like to work with elements like fire, air, water, and specifically fire energy, if you love to work with that, it works out great. The pale god is the All-Father, which is associated with destiny, time, and the underworld, often identified as Lucifer, Tubal-Cain, or Bran. And the goddess is the white goddess or the triple goddess that represents nature, the moon, and fate. It just has different names according to each of these traditions because of different cultures that bloomed and different people that founded these, so they created different names. A recurring motive on a lot of the ritualistic tools that they had during the time for Cochrane's craft showed the divine twins, which is a motif of dual kings, the Oak King and the Holly King, who fought for the favor of the goddess throughout the cycle of the seasons. There were a lot of shamanic elements to their craft, which basically means that they had huge emphasis on entering altered states of consciousness, trance work, as well as something that they like to call spirit flight, which is basically astral reality and doing astral projection. And so basically they like to focus on jumping timelines and quantum jumping. A lot of the terms are used now, they just had different terms for it back then. They focused a lot on herbal remedies as well as teas, and did a lot of meditation and inner work. So if you love to do quantum jumping or doing astral projection, this is a great one for you. And if you also love having love focusing on inner work as well as meditation, this is a great one for you. They believe that each witch should have poetic logic, and it should not be a very rigid rule to create an incantation, and so it can involve intuition as well as rhyming and patterns and poetic schemes as well as riddles. They felt that truth is something that is felt and should be uncovered naturally as compared to altering it and faking it in order to make an incantation. And they focused a lot on ancestral connections, which involved a lot of spells using blood, and they focused on land spirits, and so they did a lot of their practices on land and focused on healing ancestral trauma and ensuring that the future generations will not have to deal with generational trauma. So if you want to fix that as well, this is a great one for you, because they tap a lot into the memory of the soil and do a lot of spells involving earth as an element. The next one is Sabbatic Craft, which debunked the myth that the witch's Sabbath is a physical reality and they viewed it more as an astral reality. And so it involved a lot of intense solitary discipline and work just with yourself. And they wanted to understand a lot of the philosophies, Gnosticism and dream work of those times. And obviously during those times they were very superstitious, and so they believed in a lot of things, and this craft specifically wanted to debunk a lot of them, and they wanted to understand a lot of them through spell work. A Sabbath, according to this craft, is a spiritual nocturnal assembly that takes place entirely in trance, dreams, or on the astral plane. And so they viewed an ecstatic gathering of human souls, spirits, and ancient deities who meet beyond the constraints of physical time and space. And so they think that these are not the same reality and we are in a different type of reality, and so you can quantum jump at any possible time. You can meet people who believe different things than you, who have lived a different life than you, and you can really understand what happened and the complexities of human nature. And so this specifically focused on this as a whole. A lot of their rituals included lucid dreaming as well as sleep and trance work, and something that they like to call spirit flying, which is basically astral projection. And they wanted to join the spiritual Sabbath through it. And a lot of their magic utilized writing, sigils, and shadow work, which shadow work is very important for witchcraft, whether you are following any of these traditions or not, which I will also explain in another video. The last one is Stregheria, which is Italian witchcraft. And so it is Italian folk witchcraft which honor the goddess Diana and her brother or consort Dianus. So obviously the same as Dianic witchcraft. It focused on honoring deceased ancestors as well as keeping family secrets and magic private. They focused on making protective amulets to ward off the evil eye, and so their rituals involved using a lot of olive oil, red string wine, as well as Mediterranean hearth magic. And so theirs specifically focused on ensuring that ancestors as well as their magic is kept only to them and private to their family, and so each family has their own type of magic and the way they practice. Whew, I am sweating. But I wanted to do this video because I feel like it's very important to know which types of witchcraft are there. Obviously I did not cover them all because then this video would be very long, so I did do the most important ones and the most common ones, and I've done as much of an explanation as I can possibly on them to give you the full picture, and so you can choose which one you want to follow or which one you don't want to follow, or even if you don't want to follow any of them, just to know this is fun information and it's nice to learn about mystical beliefs as well as magic from a different time. And so that was the video, and I am so excited that you clicked on this video because I feel like this is very important in order to be a witch. Obviously the next video I'm going to be doing is about the types of witches, because after you decide on the tradition you want to follow, or even if you don't want to follow a tradition, then you can decide on the type of witch you want to be. Obviously again, you don't have to land on any labels, you can be a mix of many, or you don't even have to say the word witch and you can just practice whatever you want to practice. It's completely up to you, and there is creative freedom on it, which is why I like witchcraft a lot. But that is the video. I just wanted to close it out and say that we are all magical beings. We have the power to change our lives and we are the creators of our destiny. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. Bye. I am really sweaty because I've not been putting the fan on, but I feel like the makeup's really good today. I've done something different eyeshadow wise and I feel like you can tell. Really different, but it's really good. But anyways, let's focus on the video at hand.